All right, we are live, gentlemen. Here we go, baby. Okay. Hey, everyone in the chat. Let's just say hi to some folks. Bernard Fox. I love that name. What's up, Puck Elf? Moon at Noon is here. My fellow Marylandian. Glenn Dannison.
Moon.
This guy. I wonder who the hell he is.
Which one?
And
Who?
yeah, Truth or Tinfoil. Anyway, welcome, Tex and Randy and everyone in the chat. For tonight, we are here to talk about some goddamn wrestling. Again.
Outstanding.
For change. Yes. Damn. Gets
Ready, brother.
talking about Bigfoot and Dogman gets old sometimes. We're talking about wrestling, baby. Wrestling. Hey, it's Mike
Damn right.
Boschball. Okay, so to introduce tonight's topic, I have gathered together two of my friends who have both military backgrounds. Oh, Danny Staton. I know he's in it for this
Oh
one.
yeah. You know
Donnie,
we got to have a wrestling guy
let's
there.
be honest, Donnie. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You gathered your only two friends.
No,
Yeah,
I got a couple others, but we don't talk about them. We shoved that
You
under
leave
the
them
rug.
over on the blondes and the booze,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Anyway, so Randy and Tex both have military backgrounds, which is fitting because tonight is actually going to be also a bit of a military history show, which is a topic I've actually wanted to explore more in podcasts with you guys, just talking about military history stuff. You know, Tex, I know you've got your infamous minds where you talk about serial killers, and Randy, you've got your tinfoil, truth or tinfoil, where you talk about conspiracy theories. I think if we did one about military history, it could be a good one. We should try that out one time. But speaking of military history, you know, you and I have all both come up in the 20th and 21st centuries, these modern era where there have been some major and very important wars in the history of mankind, starting from the advent of the modern era. You have some great wars like World War I and World War II, the Vietnam War, the Star Wars trilogy, the first one, not the other crap, and probably one of the momentous wars that we're going to talk about that I feel like not enough people in history talk about, but this war was world changing. It changed the face of pro wrestling forever. And that is going to be the Monday Night War. One of the greatest, most devastating, most important, and most profoundly influential wars of our day that we got to witness firsthand.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was about to say, I saw that talk about Randy Savage there.
Okay. So, and I understand that some of you folks in the chat or listening at home might not be the most learned when it comes to military history or pro wrestling. So the three of us have gathered to educate y'all. So with that being said, let's lay the groundwork. The Monday Night Wars took place, I'd say, between what, 99, 98, and 2002?
No, it actually started at 96.
Well, okay. The first thing that started in 96, we'll go there.
Yeah.
But this war was a war between, at the time, what was the WCW and WWE, which I believe. When did WWF become WWE? Was that what?
That wasn't until after 2000.
That was after 2000. So it's still WWF at the time. Yeah.
Ric Flair had already started working with Vince on the as a general manager things and stuff. So
okay. So it was the WWF versus the WCW, which was kind of the spiritual, I guess, descendant of the NWA in the territory days. So before we go too deep in the nitty-gritty of the Monday Night Wars, what started before the Monday Night Wars was a time period, as a pro wrestling fan, known as the territory days and the NWA, which later became WCW. So to start, gentlemen, why don't you walk us through briefly just some of your general thoughts, experiences, and impressions of what the NWA, WCW, and the territory days were like for you leading up to the great Monday Night War.
I'll let you go first.
I think, you know, a lot of people talk about the 1950s being the greatest generation and stuff like that. And that's kind of the way I look at that era because you not kayfabe was at its height. You know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
you had literally you had wrestlers getting death threats, had to have police escorts in and out of the arenas. There were cars that would get totaled in the parking lot,
Oh yeah.
um, because they actually believed what was going on with
Oh,
the
yeah.
whole kayfabe thing. And it's you not. I love the fact that you would have these wrestlers go from territory to territory to territory. You had different belts
Yeah.
for every territory, and it was everybody trying to outshine everybody else. I think it reflected on the product that was put out there.
Well,
Mm,
I saw that one too. I was about to comment, but I wanted to give my take on this first. While I agree, I mean, every
that was
territory
more
has
of a
their own.
skirmish leading up to it.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
wasn't even, you can't even consider, because I mean
Yeah.
WCW didn't even have a Monday night show at that time, and they
Yeah.
weren't even on the same level as the WWF at the time. I mean, so quite
That was
frankly, that one I would not even consider that. Now, did I consider it a coup? You dang right. I never thought I'd see Ric Flair in the WWF at all,
right.
ever.
Right.
So it was cool, but neither here nor there. As far as the territory days go, everyone had their own little belt. Like, let's say World Class here, the American Championship was the top belt here. Okay, uh, but the thing is, with the territories, you had one champion. Especially if you were in NWA territory, you had the one champion. For our days, it was mainly Harley Race and Ric Flair. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if Harley Race came into an area and the other bookers of other areas are saying, "Hey, these guys need to be put down a little bit because they're getting a little bit uppity at the meetings," you did not want Harley Race coming in there and shooting on your butt. I'm trying to be a little bit nice. I know I could say what I want in here now, but Harley Race was not one to be screwed with at all.
Yeah.
And I have so much respect for that guy, just knowing what he did in his life and in his career. I mean, it's like the old timers would look at Luthez. Luthez would go into an area and they call him a shooter for a reason. If he got hold of you and you were in bad way with the head honchos, you better get ready to get stretched because he's about to hurt you.
Yeah.
But that's Brody was the same way. Bruiser Brody. He was in business for himself. And if you didn't do what he wanted to do, or it didn't make any sense, just ask Lex Luger. It ain't happening.
Well, Andre the Giant was the same way.
You dang
Yeah.
right. And I don't
So-
blame him one bit. He had an image to protect.
When would you guys say then was, in your opinion, the golden age of wrestling?
Well, we're prejudiced, though. We're thinking early 80s because we're talking
Yeah.
about Von Erich Freebirds all
Early
day long.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Late
I mean, you look
70s.
back at them now, the work rate, people talk about work rate and all that crap nowadays, you look back at them now and you're like, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. No, because they told stories in the ring.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. How many
Yeah.
heels nowadays sit there, put somebody in a rear chin lock in the middle of the ring and get the entire front row pissed off at them by talking to them and making ugly faces at them? It don't happen no more. It really don't.
Yeah, you lose the drama and the subtlety of like these simpler moves. Remember when the DDT was like the most devastating move?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
done
now
right, it's
everyone
still the
just
most
does it
devastating
like
to me.
willy-nilly, like every other move. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even know what the hell they're doing. I'm telling you right now, Jake was the best. That's all. None of them sit there and slap the back like he did when he take them down or whatever. He'd slap the back, drop them down,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all an accident. Like he said in his stuff. Remember, I told you I watched that today. It was all an accident because he fell
Right.
backwards when he's wrestling the grappler, and the crowd popped for it. He's like, "Oh crap! Look what I got!" And he just evolved from there. But nowadays, hell, honestly, think about it. Harley Race won one of his world titles in the early 70s over, I believe it was Dory Funk Jr., if I'm not mistaken, with a vertical suplex. One of the first times it had ever been done. It's like 72,
Really?
73, just a regular old vertical suplex.
And at the time, that was like the most devastating move because you're
Well,
like,
it was
oh my
something that
God, he's
hadn't been
upside
done.
down. He's just holding him there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, he didn't hold him. It was just straight up and over. It was no hold to
Whoa.
it. It was
Oh.
just pick him up, take him over, boom, done. And of course, then that became a commonplace, so it became not as devastating, obviously.
You know, it's another good
It
example.
was the same way with the body slam.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
the power slam. The power
Yeah.
slam's
Yeah.
another one. Yeah.
Hogan body slamming Andre the Giant was like the biggest deal in all of wrestling, right?
That's a whole other story right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't
You didn't-
happen unless Andre wanted it to happen.
Exactly. If Andre didn't want you to slam him, you weren't slamming him.
But then everyone lost their freaking minds, you know?
Hell, Hogan was scared he wasn't going to let him do it.
I remember as a kid growing up watching like NWA and the limited amount of NWA that I was able to watch and the old school WWF superstars. I always favored the wrestlers who did gorilla presses. I always thought a wrestler pulling off a gorilla press, to me as a kid, you're like, oh my God, he's holding him up straight with both arms straight. This guy's
Yeah.
so strong, right?
Coolest thing in the world.
That's why I like people like Ultimate Warrior and Sid.
Yeah, but
Sid used to do that. And you're
Sid
just like,
wasn't
oh my God, he's so strong.
the whole concept of the gorilla press in the first place was Hacksaw Butch Reed. He was one of the first ones to pick him up and do him like that. But Butch Reed was careful when he take him over. He'd take him over head first, and roll him like
Yeah.
you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Half the time, you didn't know what the Warrior was going to do. Is he going to throw you up and drop you? Is he going to drop you by accident? He ain't going over that way. You're going straight down on your belly. So you got to hope he gets out of the way good enough.
Right.
So I saw that one that Danny was talking about too. I actually saw where Harley Race body slammed Andre back, but that was before Andre was really big. He was probably, I would probably say, max of 400 pounds at that point. But he was still,
there were several wrestlers that body slammed him, but
Kamala did too. Kamala body slammed him, but he let him do it, and he knew what it meant to their careers and what it meant to that whole storyline for them to do it. Killer Khan had a whole angle of it. He had broken Andre's ankle after Andre really broke his ankle in the ring, and Khan took the credit for it, and Andre let him. Andre said, use it to build your character, So Andre gave back to the community more than people really know, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
can you tell the people the difference between WCW and NWA? Like, how did the NWA eventually morph into the WCW?
Got bought
you want to try it? Well, technically, World Championship Wrestling was the name of the show out of Georgia / Jim Crockett Promotions in the late 80s. And when Ted Turner bought out Jim Crockett, World Championship Wrestling just kind of became the name of the actual promotion. Whereas the NWA was kind of phased out a little bit. In fact, I can remember when Flair left, like you was talking about earlier in '91, when Flair left and went to the WWF with the old WCW, the Big Goldie is what we call it, the Big Gold belt. He carries that up there, and they come up with another new belt for the WCW Championship. Now the NWA Championship is still on its own. The NWA is not gone, but it's so under the radar that nobody even knows it's still even there, till years later. But WCW becomes in place of NWA as the Southern Wrestling promotion of choice type.
See, that's the thing. When I look at the NWA, what eventually became the WCW, do you know what that reminds me a lot of?
What's that?
The Confederacy. The Confederacy, because you have this loose confederation of promotions. That's what the NWA was. And then eventually they all kind of bunch up together under this one banner to go to war with the North, which was WWF.
They didn't, though. That's the thing. They didn't. All the wrestlers defected from those territories, like USWA, the Memphis and bunch. They all defected to go either to WWF or to WCW, one of the two. The old UWF Mid-South. It disappeared
Yeah.
and became part of it.
So
Even
they
Bill
couldn't
Watts went to
wrestle
work
it
for 'em.
back into territories if they were with WCW because those were like exclusive contracts.
Well, yeah, but there wasn't any territories really to go to. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, by then they had died. I feel like
Yeah.
that's why I feel like they kind of evolved into WCW. Not the territories themselves, but the wrestlers who made up those territories. They
Yeah.
all kind of bunched up into one banner and became WCW. I
Yeah,
don't know.
or
See,
WWF.
I draw a
One of
lot
the
of
two.
comparisons between the Monday Night War and the Civil War because I feel like the whole Goldberg thing that was kind of like their Gettysburg. That was like, the
Man,
Confederates' last swing, their last ditch attack, right before everything kind of went downhill for them. I don't know if you
yeah,
kind of
everything
compare.
went downhill when they started giving all them guaranteed contracts with
Well,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
creative control. Of course,
Well, I mean,
Hogan
you can
had
make the
complete
argument
creative
for the
control, and that screwed a
Confederacy.
whole bunch
Yeah.
of crap.
I mean, you can make the argument for the Confederacy that everything kind of went downhill for them once they started
So,
losing their supply lines in the naval side. But
not something we talk about very often,
Yeah.
but and they're overlooked a lot. The refs.
Oh yeah,
Bulldog Danny Pletches, Danny,
Davis.
no, David Manning.
Oh yeah, David Manning. He was a booker too.
Mm-hmm.
He was a booker and a ref. Hell, you talking about referees? Look at the Hebner brothers, Earl and Dave Hebner. You know, up
Legendary.
there, they
Yeah.
never wrestled, but everybody knew their name as much as well as anybody else. Teddy Long. Teddy
Well,
Long started out as a ref.
Hebner was involved in the Montreal Screwjob.
Exactly.
Right.
And he got out of there fast too.
Right. Hey,
So, I mean,
so I don't want to harp too long on the territories, but I do want to ask you, gentlemen, what would you say was, to you, the territories, right? Those were the golden years. That was the golden age. What caused the whole territory scene to die? What was it, in your opinion, or in your
Vince
understanding
Senior.
of it? Was it
oh,
Vince
Vince
Senior?
Jr. Senior was all for the territories. He worked it. Junior, Vincent K, whatever you call him, the dude that's been sued like a son of a bitch right now. That dude, he had. I'm with Danny. I like Tommy Young, but anyway, he went out and just, hey, I'm taking everything. I'm going to do my best to buy up everything. And
I thought it was funny when because that WWE and Vince is known, and that whole family is known for destroying all these little wrestling territories.
Yeah.
And then Trump makes Linda McMahon the leader of
Small Business Administration.
Yeah, Small Business Administration. What in the hell?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah.
Well,
so okay. Tell me about territories. Pretty by and large are done by the 90s because by then you had a more mainstream WWF and then you had WCW starting out.
Yeah.
WWF, I remember in like the early to mid 90s leading up to the Monday Night Wars wasn't a real low period because that was the whole clique, right?
Well, kind of transition that the territories didn't disappear; they became the independents, is what they became.
Okay.
They did their own thing because that's where a lot of wrestlers now they cut their teeth in the independents now. So
right. Well, and they use them. They're like the minor leagues. They're scout teams. They're scout teams.
Yeah.
Farm teams.
Right.
Anyway, sorry. I just thought about that. I was like, well, yeah, they're kind of there. They're still, but they're not. But yeah. But they like Memphis, the NWA. NWA is still out there.
Memphis they pull the WWE pulls a lot of the wrestlers from the Memphis territory.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That because Jerry Lawler. Jerry
Lawler, I was about to say.
His USWA Continental that he had going there for a long time. He could Austin wrestled there, Undertaker wrestled there. I mean, even Bret Hart would go on loan from WWE when he was a good guy up there, go down to Memphis, and he was a heel down there because he was going against Jerry Lawler.
Yeah.
You can't go against Jerry Lawler in Memphis and expect to be a dadgum face.
Right.
So,
So,
sorry. Go ahead.
so the question I was going to ask you guys, personally, for you guys. So mid '90s, before the start of the war, WWE was it was post like the Superstars era. So you had people like Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash on top. Once you had Kevin Nash as champion, that was kind of dull, right? That's when WWF at the time, up to that point, was the least popular,
Yeah.
and that's when WCW was kind of blowing up.
Remember,
So
he just took Vinny Vegas and made him the champion.
right. So at this time, when you guys are watching wrestling, what are you paying attention to? Are you paying attention to Undertaker, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, or are you paying attention to like the Steiner brothers over in WCW? Are you paying attention to like Lex Luger and Ric Flair and Sting? Like, what are you watching at this time?
I was kind of
Okay.
watching all of it.
Yeah, I watched all of it. I did everything. Everything came on the TV at that time. I'd watch. I mean, but at that time, you're talking about they didn't have a Monday Nitro until I want to say '95.
Right.
So you've got Monday Nitro, and you have quote unquote Raw / Raw is War / Raw whatever, and those two going against each other when they started. I was still watching everything. I mean, the very first Nitro, you had Hogan's already down in WCW, and you got Lex Luger, who had just appeared on a tape version of Raw, shows up on Nitro. There's your first shot of the Monday Night Wars right there.
So wait, what would you say was the opening, like the first thing? It was Hogan going over to WCW?
That laid its foundation. That did.
What about you,
But I
Tex?
don't think
When
that
do
was.
you
I
think
don't think
was
that was the whole
to
thing.
you was the start of the Monday Night War?
I think that was the big shot. I mean, there were other smaller, I guess you'd call them skirmishes, like you said
Yeah.
earlier.
To me,
Hogan was the big get.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys?
But the Southerners wouldn't accept him though. That's why he had such a problem getting over in '93.
So you know how when you study military history, you look back on World War I, right? And you read about how the whole thing got kicked off by because of that assassination of that one Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Mm-hmm.
That one moment kind of sparked everything that happened in World War I. To me, the Franz Ferdinand moment for the Monday Night Wars were two things. The first was Hogan going over to WCW, because him going over to WCW, then all his buddies follow, right? Eventually Macho Man follows, right?
Yeah.
Roddy Piper, I believe, followed suit.
That wasn't until later though.
But the other Archduke Franz Ferdinand moment, I think that sparked it off, was this.
Oh yeah.
The curtain call.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing with the curtain call part. All that did was just get the WWF pissed off at Triple H. That's really all that really did.
Well,
right.
They weren't going to mess with.
The curtain call was the result. It wasn't the cause, right? It was kind of.
That was the beginning of the end of kayfabe.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. That one.
Yeah.
I mean, because when they came down, they played. I'll say this for Eric Bischoff had this played right. When he brought the Outsiders in and had them kind of emulate the characters they had in WWF, it had everybody fooled. Nobody knew for sure in the
right.
We're not talking about the smart fans, the ones that are on the internet or the dirt sheets and crap like that. We're talking about the fans out there. The first time Scott Hall walks through that crowd to go to that ring, they're all going, "What in the hell am I seeing?"
I remember watching that, being like, "What in the ever-loving fuck am I watching right now?"
Yeah, to me,
this is like two worlds colliding. These guys were just on WWF TV. They come out of the blue in WCW. They're called the Outsiders, so they're still acknowledging that the fact that they're WWF guys. And you're like, I was, a teenager when I was seeing this. I was like, this is like DC versus Marvel.
Exactly.
This is like watching an Avengers movie, and all of a sudden the freaking Justice League shows up.
Yeah.
You're like,
pick a
what the
fight.
hell? You guys aren't supposed to be here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like that out of the blue. They just came up from out of the crowd, and you're like, oh my god! I just saw these guys last week on WWF. What is going on?
Well, and you were talking about the Gettysburg and all that kind of stuff a
Yeah.
while ago. I think that was when the NWO.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly. And that's the one that started the ratings war, really. I mean, there
Oh,
was
yeah.
the
Yeah.
Monday Night War, don't get me wrong. People were tuning in, but they still weren't beating WWF until
No, yeah.
that after Bash at the Beach or whatever that was where they turned. I think it was June 7th, July 7th or whatever.
Yeah.
July 7th
That
of 96, Bash at the Beach.
no. I think the Pearl Harbor moment for the Monday Night Wars was when the night Hogan turned heel.
That's what I'm talking about. The NWO.
Yeah. That was one of the I remember that shit, man. I remember I had a part-time job at the time, right? And I used to work with this guy who had like, he was like in his mid to late 20s, and he had like a 10-year-old kid, and he was telling me like, oh man, last night, I saw my son crying, bawling his eyes out. Kid was like just 10, right? And then he asked his son, why are you crying? And the kid was like pointing at the TV, and Hogan had just turned heel.
Yeah.
And this kid was freaking devastated, right?
Yeah.
Like crying, bawling his eyes out.
Yeah.
And then he's consoling him. But then at one point, he's like, but didn't you at one point tell me you'd think Hogan would be cooler if he was a bad guy? The little boy's like wiping away his tears sniffling. He's like, yeah, I think I did say that he would be cooler as a bad guy. Well, there you have it. And the kid started like turning around.
Yeah.
And then he became a diehard NWO fan. But I remember that the night that Hogan turned, and he was in allegiance in cahoots with the Outsiders.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh boy, Monday Night War is in full swing now.
Well, and think about that match. You already had 3 WCW guys. You had Sting, what's his name? Macho Man Randy Savage.
Who did they
and I can't remember who
on?
the third guy was. I
who
can't
did
remember
Hogan turn on that night? Was that Luger?
Yeah, and Luger was the other one. That's what it was. But
Yeah.
no, they turned on Macho Man. Macho Man was in the middle of the
yeah.
ring, knocked out. But you got to think about what they did to themselves just with that match alone. You just had 2 guys from the WWF that you just brought in, lay waste to your top 3 guys right there.
Right.
Lay
right.
waste to them before you even brought Hogan out. They've already laid waste and had their way on a 3-on-2 up until that point. Your booker needs to be shot.
Unless they're,
Well,
Not
I mean, they use whatever foreign objects or whatever. But either way, what I'm saying is they get done with that and they use their shenanigans. They've got him on the ground. All of a sudden, here comes Hogan, and everybody's thinking, oh, he's coming in to save.
Right.
Heenan was the only one that saw it. Is he the third man? Heenan was the only one that saw it.
So, I mean, do you guys remember your reactions at the time when Hogan turned heel and then the NWO formed? Like, do you remember watching wrestling at the time and just like, were you surprised? Did you see things coming? Like, how did you
Watch
guys?
it the next night. I didn't watch that paper.
That was can't miss the next night. No, that was can't miss.
Yeah.
I remember the next night.
I remember being disappointed. I remember going, crap.
Only thing I was interested in seeing what they were going to do with it after the fact.
I remember the next few episodes right after that pay-per-view where WCW TV was just chaos and mayhem.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? When it was just the NWO just barging into like the announce table and taking over the broadcast and like abusing the commentators.
Yeah.
And then like interrupting matches that they had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
You remember when they tried to bring the Warrior up?
Oh yeah, later on. Yeah.
Oh,
what a
yeah,
joke.
That was harsh. That was harsh.
He already had a bad rep in the business anyway, so I mean, bringing him in was just a ratings grab. That's all it was.
Do you remember that squash match that he did on Triple H right after the curtain call? I saw that shit live. That one hurt my feelings.
Oh yeah,
that one hurt my
feelings. Considering Triple H, quite frankly, would have wiped the mat with his ass. Quite frankly.
That was a dirty move they did to him. He
Yeah,
didn't
I
deserve
agree.
that.
But you know what? That shows his character. Honestly, if you're
Yeah.
gonna think about it, he stuck it out. He never left. He never did anything. He stuck it
Mhm.
out, took the bad, and turned everything he could around, and made himself, quite frankly, probably one of the best executives there's ever been that was a former wrestler.
You know, when you're banging the boss's daughter,
Yeah.
you know, and
Well, you might
The
be banging the boss's
NWO.
daughter, but
And then you got X-Pac joining. And then they just pretty much took over all the broadcasts. And remember
yeah,
how the group got progressively bigger and bigger, where it
Yep.
essentially became like half the locker room eventually became part of the NWO,
oh well,
and the
there's
other
another
half were just
legitimate
like the
badass right
losers.
there.
Who?
Scott Norton over there on the left side.
Oh yeah.
That sucker, you didn't want to mess with him either.
Oh
Kind of like
man,
Haku.
Mr. Perfect. That was one of the later
Yeah, that
times
was
we'd
that
see
one.
him. Rest in peace, guy. I love that dude. There's Conan, but yeah. God, I love me some Mr. Perfect. That guy was such a douche.
Yeah, but he made you
Yeah.
hate him even more. You know
Yeah,
what
he
I
was
mean?
such a douchebag. I loved it.
I
Anyway,
enjoyed it because I thought it was funny. I mean,
oh
when he
god.
was on his original Mr. Perfect run,
Oh man,
that
those
crap when he goes
vignettes.
screw with a kid, when he's trying to
I
shoot
remember
baskets,
I was in
like the ball
elementary
away.
school. I was like 8, 9 years old when I was watching those Mr. Perfect vignettes, being like, "Oh my god, this guy really is perfect. He hit
Yeah.
like every ball. How do you do that?" Then
Yeah.
later on, I find out that it's all edited and he had
Yeah.
messed up a billion times. I think there was one where he like actually hit a hole in one, and you're like, "No one hits a hole in one. This guy's really is perfect.
Yeah.
No one gets out of the perfect plex."
Yeah. It's oh man.
I remember as a kid watching him like go up against the Warrior, because the Warrior at the time was my favorite guy, and you're like, I'm so for the Warrior, but he's perfect. How does the Warrior be perfection? This guy hit a hole in one. Like my
Yeah,
brain was just like frazzled. My 8-year-old brain was just fried.
you're never gonna tell me anything to make me think Warrior had any kind of a good match in any way, shape, or form. So
No, but as a kid, you loved his ass. You know the kids loved his ass.
oh yeah, there's no doubt until
Yeah,
that one
that dude
kid
was
tried to
so
talk to him and he
marketable.
cussed him out.
No, you know what it was? It was until you grow up and realize that he was actually a pretty shitty worker. But as a little kid, you have,
Let's talk about a worker. I'm talking about what he did.
Oh, but you hear
Did-
all the real life stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, what did he do to
Yeah.
that kid that when he was champion? The kid came up, tried to get his autograph, and he blew up on the kid.
Yeah.
On a kid, you're the champion of the
Hey, it's more
dude. Come on now.
What's up, dude?
Anyway,
Punches.
Hey,
Don't
how
get me
you
on-
doing?
how you doing?
North Alabama Cryptid. How is everything over there? Y'all better?
By the way, guys, real quick aside, who was your personal favorite WWF guy during the Superstars days? Who was your favorite?
No, you go ahead, Randy. I got to think.
Oh
on this.
God.
I'll tell you mine after you guys go.
I got two actually.
Mhm.
During Superstar days, because you get to see them almost every week. You could see these guys. I know they weren't the Hogan level or anything like that, but Jake, obviously Jake Snake Roberts, and freaking Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful.
Mr.
That
Wonderful.
dude,
I
he
hated
was a
that guy as a
work rate-
kid.
He was a work rate maniac
hated
for
him.
that day.
I hated him because he beat the shit out of Hulk Hogan like that one day,
He had
and
the
I
best pile
cried.
driver in the
I was
business.
3 years
though.
old. I cried. I was 3 years old. I saw Hogan in pain and I cried. My dad still talks about it. I cried, like sobbed. I was 3 though. You're a little kid.
I was a big Jake the Snake fan.
Yeah.
But I was also a Roddy
Yeah.
Piper fan.
Yeah, I did. I liked him, but he would disappear. When he went off to go make the movies and stuff that he did, he would disappear and be gone for several months or whatever. You kind
Yeah.
of not necessarily.
But he did.
forget
Then
about him.
again, he did make They Live, and that movie is a cinematic masterpiece. So
It's a classic.
forgive
It
him.
is a classic.
we forgive him.
And yeah, and I've seen a couple of the movies he made with Billy Blanks too. I'm like, this is absolutely hilarious watching him and Billy Blanks go at it.
By the way, quick aside, this has nothing to do with wrestling, but thinking back on that movie, can we just say that John Carpenter back then in the 80s was on top of his fucking game? He had They Live, Big Trouble in Little China, and The Thing.
Yeah, they were all great.
This guy was knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what
John
was it?
Carpenter,
He did Halloween too first, right?
Halloween,
But that was in the late 70s, I think, when the first one came out.
That man was like a maestro, and Kurt Russell was his master brush, where he paints masterpieces with.
Ooh,
You know,
I'm gonna have to see that. The one Danny's talking about. Hell Comes to Frogtown. I haven't seen that yet. I just now okay. I'm gonna check that out. Pipers was actually
Okay.
really good in his movies. I enjoyed watching some of his movies.
So, what were your thoughts on when it became clear what the NWO was after Hogan turned heel, and then you saw what was going on?
Yeah.
With like them taking over the broadcast and essentially taking over the promotion, and then finally, when Eric Bischoff joins the NWO,
Yeah, when he finally gets
and then it becomes
ratted
the
out by Piper.
NWO show.
Hey, y'all left one out that I can't believe y'all left one out of his movies.
What?
Which one?
Well, a couple of them actually. Christine.
Was Piper and Christine?
John Carpenter. He did
John
Oh, John
Christine?
Carpenter's. I
Really?
thought Christine was
I didn't know that.
a Stephen King movie.
Well, he wrote it. I didn't know John
It's
Carpenter.
on. It's by It's based on a Stephen King book.
Yeah, I didn't know he actually did that one.
Oh, I didn't know
he
that.
did. He did. Well, he did. The Ghost of Mars, which is another good one.
Mm-hmm.
He also did a Village of the Damned.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, Village of the Damned.
Do you remember that vampires movie he did? I think it was with Bon Jovi.
Yeah, vampires. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, Bon Jovi.
But he also did The Fog.
Oh yeah, forgot he did The Fog too. That was a wild one. But anyway,
I still think Big Trouble in Little China is his finest.
Oh, I loved it. Of course, I love
James
film.
Hong,
though.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. The Thing, he did a great job remaking The Thing, and you can't disregard Escape from New York, man.
Oh yeah, that was another one I forgot about. Shit.
That's probably my favorite Kurt Russell one.
So I don't know. Were you on board with that whole thing with NWO? Were you guys for it, or were you guys? I mean, it was interesting, but then you kind of figured out after, for like the first year. But then
it served its purpose. It got on my nerves and made me hate the wrestlers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It didn't make me turn the TV. It didn't make me turn the TV off in the middle of a wrestling show like Rated R Superstar stuff did.
But then, if you recall, what was WWE doing at the time? Well, this was a little bit before the NWO, but do you remember this shit? Do you remember this? Billionaire Ted's Wrestling War Room.
Yeah.
Remember those skits they used to do where they would do Billionaire's Ted and they would have Hogan as like this old geezer and they would be making, and I'm like, yo, you're straight up making fun of your oldest, biggest money making stars, like making them out like a bunch of goons. Like even as a young person, I was just like, man, that is some petty ass shit, man. That is petty.
But he was trying to appeal to a different demographic at that point. He was trying to bring in younger viewers, and the other problem was that wasn't even the real. If I'm not mistaken, there were vignettes that he did with the Sid and Marty Krofft puppets dressed up like them.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think there was, just like the old DC Folly show.
Maybe.
So he was grasping at anything. He was almost bankrupt. He was getting ready to. He was about to lose everything.
Vince was losing for the first 83 weeks. He was losing. He was losing bad because that NWO shit. The first year was fire, right?
Yeah,
especially the chaos in the beginning. They're taking, like I said, they're slowly taking over the broadcast. They're taking over the promotion. They got Eric Bischoff. Hogan just turned heel. You have these like two guys from WWF. I remember I was glued to WCW. I was glued, right?
Yeah.
But then I was also appreciating the efforts that WWF was doing in some of their stuff. I mean, they were floundering in the beginning, those first 83 weeks.
Badly.
But then.
That's because nobody really got behind Bret Hart as a champion at that time.
Right. He was.
Look, now, I will say Bret Hart is one of the best workers ever, okay? Don't ever give the man a mic, first of all. His best days of until he was working with his brother and Neidhart and that whole Canadian faction there before he left to come to WCW. You know, right before the Montreal Screwjob stuff, that whole bunch where at first he was fighting the Patriot. I mean, he went out and found Del Reeves, you know, to bring in as the Patriot. And I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, he's never been more than a mid-card guy, and you bring him in and put him up against your champion?
He was.
So
My analysis of Bret Hart is this. In terms of in-ring performer and worker and technical abilities, he was
Yep.
the best, the
Yeah.
absolute best. And I even heard shoot interviews from like other wrestlers where they said that when they asked him what did it feel like taking like bumps from Bret Hart, they would say like it was like as if someone threw a grape at your chest. Like he was that good.
really,
Where his matches looked convincing, they looked
Yeah.
violent, and none of his opponents got a single scratch on them. That's
No.
how you know
his
he's
5
a
moves of doom.
top-notch worker, right? His problem, in my opinion, was that he was not a very good character.
No, he
He
wasn't.
didn't do much character work. Like when he was a heel, he was essentially the same guy. He
It would have
just
been
did
like
meaner
taking Dean
moves.
Malenko and putting him up there, you know?
He didn't like completely switch his character when he turned heel. That was the
No.
problem.
He was
right?
always the technical machine. That's all what he was. He's a
And even
technical
when he
machine.
was a face, like when everyone was cheering for him, he wasn't like soaking in the adulation, you know, playing with the crowd. He was always a stoic baby face. And then he was a stoic heel. He was just the same guy. That was it. I mean, he'd put the difference between Bret Hart as a face and a heel was that his moves were like just meaner, like more violent. Like he would just kind of rub it in more, which was kind of cool. Like he developed that one, he would do the figure 4 off the turnbuckle on the outside. And I was like, oh man, that shit looks painful. What a dick to be doing. Don't do that to Undertaker, guy, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, he was the same guy. If you think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, what about the travesty that was David Arquette being the champion?
that was so far after.
That
the
was a low
bullshit.
point. No. We're not there yet, Tex. We're not
Oh,
because
God
we haven't
almighty.
started talking about Vince Russo yet. We haven't got
Yeah,
there.
that dude.
Yeah.
We probably don't want to do that really.
No. That's
I have a
later
feeling
in the war. There's phases to the war, right?
Coronet will come up out of the blue and start cussing us. So I mean, we need to be careful on that one.
So we're talking about WCW kicking ass right now.
Yeah.
When does WWF start really punching back?
Quite frankly, the first time they
In
took
your
the
opinion.
ratings back, honestly, they started building it when they started building Austin.
What was the moment that started to
Austin,
things started
we
to turn
talked about
around?
it in the pre-show. Austin
Yeah.
316,
Austin 316.
King of the Ring, 1996.
I think
They
that was
started
the
building.
moment. That was the moment where WWF started building steam. Actually,
Yep.
no. I think the moment for WWF to start building steam against the NWO, I'm going to call it the NWO because at this
Yeah.
point it's the NWO. I think the moment was it started with the Bret Hart Stone Cold I Quit match.
Yeah, but that was
Probably
after
one
the
of the
316.
right. The thing is, the 316 was kind of leading up to that. That whole
Well, yeah.
saga kind of cemented Stone Cold. Once you had Stone Cold and 316, and then you have that banger of a match, right?
Yeah, that was his face turn.
Yeah,
That was the double turn. That was
that's
a
what you
double turn
needed
right there.
Yeah,
I mean, but it wasn't like they'd planned the double turn. He is already picking up steam, but they didn't
was so
plan the double
natural.
turn.
It was so
The
perfect.
crowd made that double turn happen.
Man, that crowd ate that shit up, right? And
Yeah.
it was the most perfect, natural double turn you see occurring in a single match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And that promo he gives against Jake the Snake Roberts, where he does, oh, you believe in John 316? Well, Austin 316 says, and I'm just like, it's probably one of the greatest promos of all time, gentlemen.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt.
Probably one of the
I
most
mean,
important promos of all time
for his career, for sure.
for the
Because
WWF.
Without that, I don't know that he has the same steam going into the match against Bret Hart.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I just
And then
don't.
we're off to the races.
Yeah,
and
I mean
then
that was the start of it right there. That 316 promo was the start of them coming at him, and then
But
The
what?
first time they won the ratings war back was after they put the title on him after that
Well,
WrestleMania.
you had the whole when you had Stone Cold, you had the whole and you had Stone Cold and Goldberg.
Yeah.
You know, they were the two big ones.
Yep.
And I remember everybody wanted to see them fight.
Yeah.
You know,
But hell, by the time
did it ever
Goldberg
happen?
got there,
I don't think that ever happened, did it?
no. By the time Goldberg had gotten there, Austin was already on his last leg with his knees and his neck and stuff, so he didn't even want to really get in the ring at all at that point.
Right, because of what happened with Owen.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he already had
Yeah.
the neck fusion surgery, but his knees were shot. You saw him calling the bionic redneck for a reason, you know. I mean, he had those knee braces. He could move in the ring, but I guarantee you, when he got back to the back, that dude had to ice some knees. So
Do you know what my landing at Normandy Beach moment for me was in the Monday Night War? The first time Stone Cold Steve Austin gave a stunner to Vince McMahon. And then it kicked off the whole feud with Vince McMahon.
that was the lead up. That was actually the lead up to what you call it, WrestleMania
Yeah.
14. I think it was 14.
This is when WWF started kicking the NWO's ass. Because if you think about it, it's the same idea, right? Rather than this faction of wrestlers take over a promotion, it's this inter drama, right? Because remember, Vince McMahon, prior to all of this, at first he was just a commentator. Then he was known as the owner, but he was more seen as like a straight-faced business guy. And every time he would get on the screen, it was just him making an announcement. And even the Montreal Screwjob, he was just accidentally an asshole. And you sort of felt sorry for him because he got spit on and punched out by Bret Hart.
I feel sorry for him at all.
And then, but he was always professional. He was like so professional, like so by the books. And hello, I am Vince McMahon, right? And then all of a sudden one day, Stone Cold, what an asshole. What a depraved asshole. He stunners the owner of the company, the most professional guy. And then
everybody wanted to do that to their boss. Everybody.
Yeah, and that's what made him popular at that point.
This is when the WWF found their fire.
See, and that one on the left right there, that's the first time he had the interaction with Vince as a boss, because that's what at the Tyson when they brought Tyson in to be the special referee, and they had the big thing in the ring, and he shoved Tyson shoved him, you know, and Vince was screaming, "You ruined everything!" That whole bit right there. I'm telling you, when they did that, I was like, okay, they're going to put the title on Austin now, and when they do that, WCW better get ready because all hell's coming with it, you know, because that was the everyman. He was the everyman, and everybody loved it. They had flipped. The two big companies had flip-flopped.
Right.
The WCW cartoony BS was now down here in WCW, and WWF had taken the real work rate guys and taken and put a product on that people loved.
Right.
So
now here's the other thing. I think a lot of the credit does go towards Steve Austin as the hero.
Yeah.
But you can't have a hero like that without a villain. And I gotta say Vince McMahon as the villain of that story. Dude, I mean, say what you wanted to say about Vince McMahon, that whole arc and him like turning, because he slowly turns from being this straight-laced professional guy to being the worst asshole in the universe.
Yeah.
And the man who drives him to his madness is Stone Cold Steve Austin, randomly stunnering his ass to the point where Vince McMahon just gets driven with rage, and then his true nature comes out. And what made it so compelling was because eventually Vince McMahon became an even better villain than the NWO could hope to ever be, because the NWO couldn't even decide if they wanted to be villains or not. Right?
NWO were douchebags. Yeah, I remember the beer bath. That was hilarious. That was great.
Remember when Austin like concreted Vince's Corvette?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was funny too. He was very proud of that Corvette.
And we watched that clip of Austin beating the shit out of Vince in that hospital room.
Yeah, with
Vince's ass hanging out, hits him on the head with a bedpan. I mean, it's so perfect.
But here's the other thing with that promo that you're talking about with the bedpan.
Yeah,
You know what that was the birth of, right? That one promo, Mr. Sacco.
Oh yeah.
That was the first time Mick Foley used Mr. Sacco to try to cheer up Vince.
I remember that now.
You
That
talk
was
about you
Yeah.
talk about an underrated character.
Oh, you ain't just kidding. But he
No,
gets a
I
lot more
think
due now than he
I
used to.
think Vince McMahon, not the person, but the character, made that whole era.
Oh yeah. Without
Yeah.
him, you don't have the same dynamic. You really
Right.
don't.
No. It would Steve Austin's story would not be nearly as compelling. Although it all culminated with this.
How is that a culmination? They fought 3 times for the belt that I know of.
Well, no, what I mean is the first time they met at WrestleMania, and then you kept seeing that Limp Bizkit trailer, like promo.
Yeah.
And people were all getting psyched. You're like, oh my god, because this is right when okay. Here's the other side of WWE's counteroffense. It wasn't just the whole Stone Cold and Vince
No.
dynamic, it was also the rise of The Rock.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, for the people who are listening at home who may not be familiar with this era of wrestling, walk us through the rise of what comes from Rocky Maivia, Die Rocky Die, to the Nation of Domination, all the way to the People's Champion. Walk us through that whole saga, gentlemen. Remember Rocky Maivia? Remember that shit? Remember
I
he
laugh
was
at
such
it.
a this guy was like just like he looked like from straight up out of a Moana movie. This guy
That's
looked like out
exactly
of
what he
Moana,
was.
right? He was like I'm a plucky Islander dude, and my daddy is Rocky Johnson, and everyone, and he was supposed to be like, in my opinion, I think he was like a Polynesian Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah.
I think that's how he was marketed. The
That could have been
Polynesian
done.
Kerry
I mean,
Von Erich, right? He
that
was
could have
like
been seen
the
that
white
way.
meat baby face, but the Polynesian version of that.
Well,
And
and
then,
look at how
but
green he
people,
was at that time, though. I
but
mean,
this was then when the time was when Stone Cold was beating the shit out of Vince McMahon. So people were like, man, fuck this guy. Boo this guy. This guy's too
Yeah.
corny. And this guy was marketed as like the most pure, innocent guy. And everyone's just booing his ass unintentionally.
Yeah.
It was hard to watch, guys.
oh yeah, because
It
nobody
was hard to
wanted. They were
watch.
all like, "This dude he's crap. He's cookie cutter. We don't want to see,"
Right.
because they were so used to seeing the other stuff. They don't want the cartoony crap no more.
Right. So then, but WWE here does the right thing, right? Because what do they do? Okay, well, if everyone's going to boo his ass, let's make him a heel.
Which was
Joins
the
the
best
Nation
thing
of
that ever
Domination.
happened to him.
And that's where the character of The Rock, you can see it slowly start developing, slowly kind of building up towards eventually he works his way up to the people's eyebrow. He's got the shades,
I
he's got the
think once they
cadence.
cut him loose on the mic,
Right.
because
Yeah.
there's very few people that's better on the mic than The Rock.
Yeah. And on the fly, we don't need
Consistently.
no damn
Yeah.
script or anything. He can do it on the fly like Ric Flair used to in the old
Yeah.
days.
And it was funny.
The one of them that is, I think probably can hang with The Rock is John Cena.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I would say, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you right now. Everybody talks about Ric Flair being a great with a mic. Everybody talks about that. There's only one person that literally made you feel like he was talking into your soul when he talked to you on a damn promo, and that was Jake.
Oh yeah.
When Jake would sit there and cut one of his promos and sit
Mm.
there, and I remember it to this day, on Superstars, he's doing a thing with Gene Okerlund, and he said he starts asking about fighting. I think he was fighting Macho Man at the time, and he's like, just remember, when you think you got all the answers, I changed the questions and walked away. I'm like, that's probably one of the greatest lines ever in a promo. It's like to be the man type thing,
Yeah.
Jake was a storyteller.
Mhm.
That's what I loved about the man. And that's why they do good when they bring him into to like second, like Lance Archer and several of these other guys that he comes in and he's the mouthpiece for. Hell yeah, make that man a manager and let him do the talking for these kids who don't know how to even pick up a mic, much less talk into it. So, I mean, sorry that I digressed on that one, but yeah, The Rock, he's a natural. He's an absolute natural with it.
That's one thing that people talking about Von Erickson, and I think you're never going to talk about wrestling and not talk about Von Erickson.
Yeah, no,
But none of them were mic guys.
no. David was probably the best.
Yeah.
And I saw a promo in Florida when he was doing a heel run in Florida, probably 82 time frame. And he talks to this blonde girl that's about to do the thing. How you doing, honey? And I'm just like, I'm dying laughing. I'm thinking, boy, if he tried that in Texas, every woman on the daggum side of the ring would be all over him. I'm like, golly.
But y'all were talking earlier about Bret Hart was not a mic guy.
No.
The Undertaker was not a mic guy.
No, that's why he had that.
But he was a character guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was a character guy. There's a difference between mic guy and character guy, I think.
Yeah.
In WCW, when he was in WCW as Mean Mark Callis, they put Paulie Dangerously managing him because he needed somebody to help him talk.
Mm-hmm.
The few times you see him early in his career, please don't let that man talk.
Mm-mm.
But now he knows how to use it, where he needs to. But, I mean, he's even the first to admit that's the best thing. Putting Percy Pringle / Paul Bearer with him was the best thing in the world.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
So,
he didn't pick up any mic skills till he had his American Badass run.
Yeah. And then it was cool. I mean, it was cool to hear him talk then because he didn't try and sugarcoat anything. He literally just tell you how it was. I'm going to whip your ass right now, whether you like it or whether you don't, type thing. So,
but Stone Cold was a good mic guy. He was a good character guy. So, and he was a good worker. And The Rock had the same thing. John Cena's got the same thing.
Yeah.
He hits it on
I
all
think so.
wheels.
Yeah, he does.
But I think John
really
Cena
does.
had to develop his too because I think he was scripted so much early on. They didn't give him free mic run.
I think John Cena's problem was that he was too polished.
Yeah.
That could be too.
Yeah.
But I've never been a big Cena guy. I do respect the man, don't get me wrong. I think he's a hell of a damn worker and a hell of a damn wrestler, but I've just never been a Cena guy.
He was the answer to Hulk Hogan after Hulk Hogan left.
Yeah.
But
also he was another one popular because
work out, be good, and all this kind of stuff.
I don't think we ever
because of the people. People made him popular. He didn't just become popular. You know what I mean? He kind of worked his way into it. He didn't.
I don't think we ever saw the true potential of Cena though, because we never saw him turn heel.
He was heel early.
No, he was unintentionally. Well, yeah, early, but I'm talking about once he hit his heights, there was a time when people were booing him like they were booing Roman Reigns, right? For the same reasons.
Well, yeah, but what he did,
the smart thing to do is like what they did with The Rock. They turned him heel, right? But there's
a reason they didn't do that. The whole reason was because that dude was doing so many of the Make-A-Wish things.
Yeah.
To turn him heel. To turn him heel would have destroyed kids that it'd been like turn Hulk heel in 84. You'd have destroyed an entire generation.
Right. So, those kids, and he does do a lot of good work for a lot of kids, like Make-A-Wish and everything. He always does. I respect the guy.
Am I happy that he did the job to The Rock when The Rock came back the first time? Yeah, kind of, because I'm like, Rock at first he did the job, but then he got the win back at WrestleMania. You know what I mean? The WrestleMania after, and I'm like, okay, kind of like that. And then this last WrestleMania, you're looking at a boy right here in that main event on Sunday night that you don't see me mark out a whole lot. I marked out on that main event, okay? Because when they said it was bloodline rules, and I'm sitting there going, oh, this ought to be interesting, Sure enough, here comes Cena down. Then, okay, I know The Rock's coming. But when that gong went off and damn Taker was behind him, I was like, where did this shit come from? Where did this shit come from? So they can still surprise people. Like, I never thought CM Punk would ever be in the WWE ever again. But that caught me off guard too. So
yeah,
they have ways of doing it, but I'm just not. I'm
I
just
don't
not
even
a
know who's
cynic guy.
wrestling now. I haven't watched it in so long. 'Cause I got so tired of it.
I think. Well, of course, Roman Reigns now he's off making a movie now, so that's why that's one of the reasons he dropped the title. So
Well,
but the
it's
dude had it
different
for
now.
4 years.
Wrestling is a lot different now, I feel like. Yeah, man, I can't even put my finger on why it's different. It just is.
It doesn't have the mystique about it like it
Well,
used to.
I mean, after the Monday Night Wars, an argument can be made is after that wrestling slowly died was because during the Monday Night Wars, wrestling was at its peak in terms of popularity. If you look at the ratings and the numbers of people watching, the millions of people watching each show when it was at its peak, yeah.
Look at the WWE's ratings. They went to 10s and 12s, which is unheard of for a wrestling show.
Let's talk a bit now about, because we've gone almost an hour now. Let's talk a bit about the end of the Monday Night Wars when it was clear that WCW was dying a death.
You mean when
I'm
AOL
talking
took
about
over?
no, I'm talking about this shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're talking about your buddy now.
Yeah. Tell me about when once now you're realizing it was close, it was neck and neck, and then WWF starts swinging around, and then it's just like boom.
Yeah. Well, they
yes,
quite
Buck Alpha did.
yeah. It just let's see if I can word this correctly. Vince Russo took credit for everything that happened in WWE during the Attitude Era. He took credit for it. And he was a writer there, yes. And he was a head writer, or whatever you want to call him. WCW thought they were doing the greatest thing in the world by stealing him away. Problem is, they didn't think about it. Everything Vince Russo did had to get blessed off by somebody, right? You ain't going to get Vince McMahon down there because he's the common sense that kept all the stupid shit out.
Well, for the most part.
Brawl for all.
The Shocker.
That was a Dusty thing. You talk about the Shockmaster. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's a Dusty thing. They screwed him on that one. You know how the reason he fell? When they built that breakaway wall, the footer at it was not breakaway. So they had a full-blown 2x6 down there. So when he busts through the wall, he's thinking the whole thing's going to go away. And that 2x is right there, and it trips him right on into it. I'm like, y'all set him up for failure because you had shitty damn people doing your stuff.
What about was it Gobbledygooker or?
Oh God,
that was earlier. That was
SummerSlam SummerSlam? Yeah. No, Survivor Series of '91 because they had it for several months. Remember, they had the egg thing, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And I remember the Undertaker.
That was prior to the war.
They were, but it was the Undertaker's debut as well, and the Undertaker was sitting there in his documentary going, "Oh God, they're going to make me Eggman. Oh, please don't make me Eggman. Oh, please don't make me Eggman." Then actually, Bruce Pritchard said later that it was a rib on him. We wanted him to think he was coming out of the egg.
So, tell me about when you finally saw Vince McMahon's face on Monday Nitro. What were your thoughts? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that moment when you were like, oh, shit, it is done?
Yep. I knew it was coming because I'd already read about them buying them out anyway. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later.
But when you finally saw Vince McMahon's face, it was like, I think it was the opening shot, right, of Monday Nitro. And you're like,
you had Raw and Raw on both stations had Raw.
Yeah.
On, I knew it was coming, didn't really care. I mean, I wanted to see what they were going to do with it. That's what I wanted to see. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, WCW did a better invasion angle with the NWO than the WWE did.
Man, WWF botched that so hard. They botched that so hard.
It could have been really cool, and they could have played that for years. They really could have pushed it for years.
That was the plan. They were planning on keeping WCW alive and keeping it as a separate promotion, but they botched that storyline so hard that they had to do a 180. Yeah.
And they couldn't get the other players in either. You had Kevin Nash who sat at home saying, "Oh, well, hell, I'm just going to be able to sit. I can either go sign for them for part of my stuff or sit at home and make my full contract. Shit, I'm sitting at home. I may go make a movie here or there."
That's the thing. They eventually they get the NWO back, but by the time they get them back, it's already too late. The ship's already
because it was
sailed.
a fight between Ric Flair and
Yeah.
Vince McMahon by that point. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, but the reason they did it is because those guys were smart. They sat at
Mhm.
home and collected those WCW paychecks that they were guaranteed
I did like
instead
the
of going and hurting
Ric
themselves and running
Flair.
themselves. Yeah.
I did like the Ric Flair Vince McMahon chemistry. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, they were good together until Rick. You know, like I said, Rick's gone off.
We
the deep
gotta.
end the last
I
couple
feel
years,
like we're
so.
glossing over so much stuff. We gotta bring up like these notable mentions, right? Like for example,
Okay.
remember when they tried to chop off Val Venus's dick because the Japanese guys were jealous?
Oh
of
yeah,
it?
you know,
Do you remember
PP.
that shit?
No, PP.
Remember
That
that
was
shit, Tajiri?
what the hell was the name of that group? Kai and Tai. That's Kai and Tai.
Yeah.
Taka
And they're like, Val
Michinoku and all
Venus,
those guys.
he penis too big. We must cut. Remember that shit? Do you
Well, actually, they were
remember?
cutting it because he was coming on to the manager's girl or daughter or wife or girlfriend or whatever it was. The girl over there, it was one of their girlfriends, and he was coming on to her, and she was all ooh type thing, and they're gonna stop that crap.
Oh yeah.
Hey.
And they're like grabbing her, taking her away, and they're like, "Hey, penis too big." Remember this shit? Giving birth to the hand.
Oh
Remember
yeah.
this?
Poor Mark Henry. Poor
Mark
Mark Henry.
Henry?
But I'm gonna tell you what, Mark Henry, I love that dude. That dude is one of the most underrated professionals. I shouldn't say, strongman or anything because he is a strongman, but
Yeah.
as far as wrestler, but as a professional person in the squared circle or in the business,
Mhm.
the dude is underrated big time. Just nothing but great stories about the guy. I mean, come on. He gets to run around with a legend Mae Young at that point. Mae Young is 80-something years old in that situation and taking bumps off the top rope with Bubba Ray Dudley.
Yeah.
Come on. Moolah's still going strong, and she's 79 at that time, 75. And I'm like, these women are getting out there doing more than the quote-unquote divas are thinking about because they're wrestlers. They're real wrestlers. They're not just eye candy like the Bellas.
Yeah.
I wanted to close the show by showing so bad the clip of Big Show at his father's funeral. Remember
that
that?
was so shitty. That was another
Oh,
Vince
I love
Russo
that.
crap
That was
fest.
so crappy. So, do you remember that text? Big Show at his father's funeral.
Yeah,
Big
you ain't
Boss
missing
Man
nothing.
shows up, and then
Yeah.
he ties Big Show's father's casket to his car, and he drives
And
off
drags
with
it
it.
off.
And then Big
Oh,
Show's like
yeah.
on top of it. Remember
But
that?
Big Show's dad hadn't died at that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but still, I'm just like, poor Ray Traylor. Ray Traylor got set on some of the worst freaking gimmicks. Or I shouldn't say gimmicks, but stupid
Remember?
things.
You remember when Big Boss Man had Al Snow eat his own dog?
Yeah, and Al Snow didn't know it.
Yeah. I mean, these were just storylines. Remember, Tex? Like that whole Edge angle with Lita? You're like, yeah, I'm gonna stop watching now.
Oh, Edge.
That was
Matt
all
Hardy.
Vince Russo. That was all Vince Russo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, Edge and Matt Hardy and that
was all
after
Vince
Russo
Russo.
left.
Yeah. All that
Russo was
stupid
after
shit
that.
was
Russo was gone before that. The Edge and Lita thing, because that had the Matt Hardy.
They buried. They took out his old scripts from a shoebox, man.
They probably did because that was shitty anyway. But
no, Vince McMahon had all his story ideas by the time he left. He made it. He forced that guy. He forced that guy to sit at the pool next to him. You know,
I'm gonna tell you what. You sit there. You go out and look up. There's a couple of Jim Cornette interviews out there that I guarantee you look at a couple of them. He tears Russo a new asshole all over the place.
Can I share with the world my personal reason for hating Vince Russo's guts? My own personal reason for fucking hating that guy is because I know that guy's racist towards Asians.
He's racist.
And okay, everybody. I know exactly why. I know because when he was running TNA, do you remember that? When he was running TNA?
Yeah.
You know who they had on their roster when he was running TNA?
Who?
Kazuchika Okada. They had Okada.
They had Okada in that
And do you know what Vince Russo had Okada do? Do you know what he made his gimmick was? What? They made him as Kato.
He was Kato? I thought it was somebody else.
He was the chauffeur with the mask.
Yeah, but
I was like,
Kato
you're going to do that to
Okada?
Too, and when people complained to him online why he would do that to Kazuchika Okada,
Yeah.
His response was because Asian guys ain't marketable. And at that point, I'm like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah, he was worthless anyway.
He did that to Okada. He made that dude into Kato. Kazuchika Okada is like one of the best wrestlers in the freaking world. Really, you're
Greatest.
going to do that to that
Greatest. Yeah, he's a workhorse is what he is, and he makes people want to hate him. You know what I mean?
guy? And then his rationale for doing that to him was, "Oh, Asians ain't marketable." As soon as I heard him, like I found out that he had said that, I was like, "Man, fuck this guy for life."
Before Mark
know?
Calloway became the Undertaker, Ole Anderson had the nerve to look at him and said, "Red, I don't think anybody's ever going to pay to see you." So he goes up to WWE and becomes the Undertaker. Yeah, there's a brilliant move there, buddy boy.
Man, that should piss me off, man. That should hurt me into feels, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that right there tells you how much of a douche he really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Anyway. Well, you want to talk about the racist side of it. Watch the Jim Cornette interview where he's talking to New Jack, and New Jack says when they went to Smoky Mountain, Cornette looked at him and Mustafa and said, "Hey, I want y'all to go out there and piss off a bunch of white people." That's all he told him to do.
Yeah, New Jack loved that though.
Exactly. That dude got as another one, and he never went to WWE, and I wish he would have. Boy, he'd have been a damn breath of fresh air.
No, Vince, he would not have gotten along with Vince.
Oh, he didn't.
I
never
liked New Jack. Never did.
Never did.
Never did.
I think he's a thug.
Okay.
He was a thug. Oh, wait. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot. We cannot end this discussion without talking about the third wheel in this party.
ECW.
I can't believe ECW. Tell us your thoughts on ECW, gentlemen. The rise and fall, the general.
I thought it was a great idea, but it was. I don't know. They didn't. I don't know. It got to where it was just the same thing over and over. Get in there and just beat each other with as many foreign objects as you can. And, it was just old hat after a short period of time with me.
Yeah, I mean, because they got away from they were putting on some actually decent. I know they were quote unquote hardcore matches, but hell, you put Taz in there with somebody. Taz is a wrestling machine, or he was at that time. I mean, he's sawed off like I am, a little short runt compared to the rest of them guys. But you didn't want to screw with him. He could really choke somebody out just like that without thinking about it, And I'm like, he was fun to watch. But once again, he was a crappy interview. He's gotten better over the years, but he was a shitty interview. There's saving grace with Shane Douglas early on because he was gold on the mic. As much as I hate Shane Douglas.
What was that guy's name? That guy that took all the freaking bumps, got cut up in the barbed wire.
Oh, Sabu.
Yeah,
Sabu, man.
Yeah.
He was so freaking
chic.
He was so freaking talented, man, and it was just wasted. It really was. And Kevin Van Dam,
Rob Van Dam.
Rob Van Dam was just
Kevin Van Dam's a fisherman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob Van Dam, I never could get behind.
Yeah. I wasn't impressed with him. I like Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman better.
I like Tommy Dreamer, but
I got some thoughts.
I got so tired of every time he was going to watch Tommy Dreamer, every time he get in, he's got his ass whooped.
Yeah, and then he hits somebody with a kendo stick and wins, or something like that.
Now I did like it when Mick Foley was there.
Yeah, because we knew who he was, and he was able to they gave him carte blanche, go out there and cut a promo, and he would. That's where some of his greatest came from.
Yeah,
and he gave places for older people that did that crap, like Terry Funk, to go.
And Terry Funk is another one, man. I had a lot of respect for Terry
Oh,
Funk.
you ain't just kidding.
That man went till he couldn't. I mean,
Yeah. His last match was at 72 years old, and he did a moonsault off the top rope at 72 years old. And I'm just like, dude, you're gonna kill yourself. You got brittle bone disease by now. You got to.
I think that's the way he wanted to go out, though. Honestly,
I think so. Yeah. But hell, when he died, he had already been into the dementia thing.
Yeah.
So he hadn't even been seen in public for like 3 years or 4 years at that point, really. So
I remember watching the Von Erichs wrestle the Funks, man.
Way back, that was the 70s then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, and you had to be at the right place at the right time because we didn't cross over promotions. I mean, we're talking about the territory days. They didn't cross over unless it was a joint thing and everybody's getting equal pay.
Yep.
So, God, I love the Funks were funny. Well, Terry was great. Dory, the worker, he was the workhorse. Terry was the mouth. Terry was the character.
I can't remember who it was. It was either Terry or Dory that I saw wrestle. Was it Ric Flair?
Dory?
Or was it one of the Von Erichs? It was at the it was the same show that where I got to shake Andre the Giant's hand.
Oh Lord. Yeah, there's
it was in the old Cowboy Stadium.
Oh, okay. You're talking about one of the Star Wars in Texas Stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Funk came down for a couple of those, actually.
Yeah.
My memory, gentlemen, was I guess because I might be of a different generation, slightly different, but my memory of ECW was completely different. I remember the first time I saw ECW, I was a freshman in high school. This is me, Dine Show fresh out of puberty, right?
Yeah.
I'm on Channel 9.
Fresh into it, we don't know which.
I'm on like Channel 9 at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Hoping to see Howard Stern on so I could get a glimpse of pixelated boobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I switched the channel one day, and this gritty ass, home camera looking, grungy pro wrestling with like Sabu like doing backflips off like barbed wire.
Yeah.
And I am just like, what the fuck is this?
Exactly.
And that shit blew my 14-year-old mind, gentlemen. It blew my 14-year-old goddamn mind. When I saw Taz doing full Nelson suplexes on dudes into tables, I was like, he just broke that guy's neck. Why would you break that guy's neck like that? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
When I saw
definitely.
like Sandman drinking beer and smoking cigarettes, this is pre-Austin. And I'm like, sir, you can't be drinking beer and smoking cigarettes in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
There's a rule against that. That shit just blew my freaking mind, right? Of course, while the Monday Night Wars is going on, ECW is kind of making their play as well, right? They're starting to invade I think the ECW invasion is probably better done than the WCW invasion.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you had the ECW product you got Jerry Lawler to go over there and talk about extremely crappy wrestling, I mean,
yeah,
it was gold. I mean, that was a better done. You're right. It was a better done invasion, but they only did it for a couple of months. So
right.
It is what it is. I mean, Dudley Boys were better. I thought they were better in ECW than anywhere else because you didn't just have Devon and Bubba Ray. You had
the whole family,
different Dudley Boys, and Big Dick Dudley, the big dog. He was in there, and I'm like, golly, these guys, they were beasts. And Sign Guy, the one they always call Sign Guy, he was Sign Guy Dudley first,
Oh, every ECW show always had that one guy in the Hawaiian shirt in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Yep.
Anyway, I think I think we've gone. Hey, Kathita. Oh, you're kind of coming in late. Yeah, but Yeah, is there anything else we need to touch on, gentlemen? Or I think we're
Well, I want to touch on what Danny said. Danny Staten said he says he saw the Briscoes versus the Funks in the '70s.
Yep.
That is a freaking classic, man.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, and you could bet there was blood probably knowing them.
Oh, yeah. Anytime the Funks were involved.
For the most part, yeah. But I mean, the Briscoes weren't against doing it as well. You know, I
Oh
mean,
no,
I saw
Well,
Jack
back in the
bleed a bunch of
'70s,
times.
nobody was. Everybody was
That's
cutting
true.
in.
That's true. I mean, look at Bruiser Brody's head.
Oh yeah, his and Abdullah the Butcher's.
Yep.
Or-
Hell, even Dusty Rhodes. Look at Dusty Rhodes'
Yeah,
head.
yeah. Kamala's and I mean all them.
God, that we could do a whole show just on Kamala himself, though. That dude was
Oh.
actually cool to listen to.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we'll leave it at that. I hope you guys like the show and tune in. You'll see these guys on more often. We still got plenty of topics about sports and wrestling and non-cryptid paranormal stuff. Not to say that that stuff is not worth talking about or not cool to talk about, because I love talking about that stuff. But again, this is a haven for us to talk about just stuff that other stuff we like, just other stuff we like.
Okay, I'm going to start measuring. Got it.
All right, folks. Peace out.